Anyways, let's dive into the action. As I said, we wanted to cover the Friday game. It's an interesting kind of storyline that's happening on this weekend. There is the title race. Carefully phrasing this because I'm still not 100% convinced it's actually back on, but we'll go with it. We'll roll with the punches and say the title race. But interesting enough too, I mean, Leverkusen played Bochum, right? Bayern played St. Pauli. Both of these teams, Bayern and Leverkusen, want to win their respective games to keep each other at bay, or keep the gap between the two short, depending on which perspective you come at for this one. But also Bochum and St. Pauli are only 5 points apart from one another down in the basement of the table, right? Bochum currently sit 16th with 20 points, and the St. Pauli are in 15th with 25 points. Hoffenheim are thereabouts as well, right, with 26 points, and then a little bit further up is Union Berlin, 27, and then at 12 you have Werder Bremen with 33. I suspect they're kind of out of this conversation entirely, but it is an interesting parallel that's going on here. Bochum, of course, the big story this week was that they extended the contract with Dieter Hecking. He's done a phenomenal job getting Bochum into this conversation, into the first place, and I mean, they weren't into the promotion relegation playoffs last year after some struggles as well, and after losing that first leg at home 3-0 to Düsseldorf, actually still managed to stay in the league. And at the moment, I think if promotion relegation playoffs is where they end up, I wouldn't even I would actually probably suggest that that's something that's an extra 2 games that they would probably take, Stefan.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a really interesting kind of second half of the season for Bochum. And you're right, Dieter Hecking deserves a huge amount of credit for excuse me, for what he's done there. It's really interesting that before the international break, the story was kind of lingering about him getting the contract, and it was initially suggested that he would be given a 2-year contract if they were able to avoid relegation. And obviously, in that time, they decided just to go with it anyway. And I thought we were just chatting before we came on air here about his comments in the press conference. And for anyone who missed this, in the match day prior to the international break, they were playing Eintracht Frankfurt, and there was a huge delays throughout the game because the Frankfurt ultras put out a banner which was blocking one of the emergency exits. The stewards were obviously fighting with them, not physically fighting, but like debating with them about it and trying to explain to them how to bring it down. The Frankfurt ultras were making a big song and dance about it. They eventually stormed out the stadium because of all sorts of ultra superstition and nonsense that we talked about. I'm sure if Matt was here, he'd probably be able to put it more eloquently than me. I'm just not that bothered. But the Bochum ultras decided to actually leave as well out of solidarity. They took all their banners down, they stopped singing. And it was quite interesting that Dieter Hecking in his press conference basically took aim at them and said, look, we have to make sure the club's all singing from the same hymn sheet. Everyone's kind of facing the same direction. We're all working together to stay in the league. And, he basically took aim at the ultras and said, I'm not happy with the way they behave. They have to sort themselves out, basically. And I think, that you could maybe just say that's just some old guy just kind of shouting at clouds sort of thing. But I think that probably shows the kind of confidence that he has in his standing at the club. There's also the situation where there's no sporting director at the club. Jorgi Schmadtke is the kind of leading contender to potentially get that job. If I'm not mistaken, he's the one-time Liverpool sporting director. Is that the same one who went to work for Klopp for a while, or am I confusing him with someone else? I think I am confusing him with someone.
That's him.
Yeah, I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah. He
from Wolfsburg.
That's correct. Yeah, Jörg Schmadtke.
Yeah, my memory hasn't failed me yet.
SC Freiburg.
Yes, well, exactly. If we're looking for that, yeah, I've got it there actually. Yeah, Liverpool sporting director, Wolfsburg managing director sport, Cologne director sport, Hanover, etc. So yeah, he's been linked with a job, but nothing confirmed yet. So basically, Hecking is kind of ruling the roost here, and it's obviously working well for Bochum, because I
Yes.
quickly checked before we came on air here, and had the Bundesliga started the weekend that he took over at Bochum, they would actually be currently sitting 13th in the
Mm.
table right now. But up with Hoffenheim, St. Pauli, Kiel, Union Berlin, and Heidenheim below them. Interestingly enough, they would be sitting 2 points above St. Pauli, so they've obviously made up 2 points on them, who've actually had a decent second half of the season as well. They picked up a few more points as well themselves. So, but no, he has done pretty well there. I also went back and checked how he's done compared to previous kind of Bochum head coaches, whether it's Thomas Reis or Thomas Lech. So for example, right now, Häkking's averaging 1.12 points per Bundesliga game as Bochum head coach. Thomas Lech on the average 1.09. Thomas Reis on the average 1.05. 1.05. So he's doing better than both of them technically. As far as he's concerned, since he's been in the job, he's pulled Bochum out. They are still 16th, as you said, still in the relegation spot, but they were dead last when he took over. And they've picked up some pretty decent results since he came in there. Most of them have been home games, admittedly, but obviously the 3-2 win over Bayern Munich before the international break, which was just a total wild turnaround that game. But before that, they took a draw at Wolfsburg. They drew 2-2 with Holstein Kiel. So, they are causing upsets, mostly at home, but sometimes away from home. And it'll be interesting to see how they do against Bayer Leverkusen.
Yeah, I need to add one tiny detail on this new 2-year contract. It is tied to the club staying in the Bundesliga. Is I guess the provision that they announced here. Ilya Kancik saying as much in the press conference today. What I think is wild, and as you mentioned it, they just had 1 point when he took over the club. That is, and I think that is at the time I was like, there's no way Bochum managed to stay in the Bundesliga, and I think they have a really good shot. I mean, it remains to be seen what happens with the Zweite Bundesliga, right? Who's going to finish third there? I think it's currently Paderborn who have that final spot. And just double checking that, yes, it is Paderborn, but tomorrow it could be Magdeburg or Hannover. It's changed just so quickly. Kaiserslautern also fully in that race as well. HSV Köln are only slightly above that, so could be anyone. And so if you Bochum, I think if you Bochum and it's not Köln or HSV, you probably take your chances in that particular match.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what happens on this match day, because as I said, there is this small hope that we maybe get a title race back in the Bundesliga. And Leverkusen at home against Bochum. This is not at the Ruhrstadion. This is at the Bayer Arena. Maybe a little bit of a different scenario altogether. I was at Leverkusen's last game in Stuttgart, where they came back after being down 2-0 and 3-1, and they still managed to somehow get back into that match and ultimately win it. And there's a lot of talk about maybe going forward, Javi Alonso is going to play with two strikers, Schick and Boniface, in an attempt to replace the still injured Florian Wirtz. And there is no strict timeline on when Wirtz comes back, right? It's something that it's an injury that will take time and doesn't necessarily resolve itself that easily. And we were talking about this a little bit before the pod. There was a time when we would have said, okay, Leverkusen play Bochum, that's a given 3 points. But the way Bochum have been playing and taking points of really big teams, including Bayern Munich,
Dortmund.
and Dortmund, I mean, okay, sure.
Sorry, mid-table clubs as well.
Mid-table clubs as well. I mean, the one against Bayern Munich stands out, right? In Munich as well. So I'm just saying, like, this long gone are the days where Leverkusen can just say, oh yeah, we're playing Bochum, that's 3 points in the bag.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they are still quite inconsistent to an extent. Like, they can beat Bayern one week and then lose to Frankfurt, and then, they can beat, as you say, Dortmund and take points off Wolfsburg one week and then lose to Hoffenheim. They drew with RB Leipzig as well not that long ago, lost to Gladbach, so it is quite hot and cold, but it'll be interesting to see how they approach this game and how they try to really upset Leverkusen, because they've had the full international break to kind of work on this game. And I think they'll cause all sorts of problems for Leverkusen, to be honest with you. But they've also got a really interesting run in, which just only adds to the kind of drama of it all. So they've got, after this game, they've got Stuttgart and then Augsburg, which, okay, fair enough, two kind of mid-table clubs that probably cause them issues. But after that, they then play Werder Bremen, Union Berlin, Heidenheim, then Mainz. But then on the final day, they play St. Pauli away in Hamburg, which would be really, really interesting. So in their kind of last, 6 or 7 games, they're playing, three of the teams around them in the relegation race. So it's all going to come down to that, really, those last 4 or 5 games. But if they can continue picking up points, and Werder Bremen away is a perfectly winnable game, I think, for Bochum these days, considering the way that Bremen are playing. So they don't have to win it against Leverkusen, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they can do. And as we said, they've improved dramatically under Dieter Hecking, so I wouldn't be surprised if they took a point against Xabi Alonso's team.